that would be the one thing I would say is think critically. Don't be afraid to think outside the box and challenge kind of the status quo. Because even I've been with my company 10 years and I've noticed I get kind of comfortable in where I've been in the company and I think I know it all. And I'm like, no, I gotta keep challenging myself. And that's how I will help the company continue to get better.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Audit Podcast. I'm your host, Trent Russell. Today on the show, we have Genna Smith. She is the Internal Audit Leader at RYAM. We've had a lot of people reach out and ask about RYAM, audits being more involved with that and taking it over or facilitating it. And that is something that Genna's been tasked with also. So we talk about lessons learned that she can share with everyone from her experience over the past year. Process improvement is like a mindset for Genna. It's very, very big for her. So we ask how she does that internally for her own team. Almost think of it as if an audit was done of the internal audit processes and team, which I always think is really interesting. So we talk about, is that a mindset? Is that a process? If it's a process, what can you tell us so that we can incorporate that into our own day-to-day or monthly, whatever kind of periodic review of ourselves and the internal audit function that we're in. And then last thing, Genna took over as the leader of the internal audit department a little over a year ago. And so we talk about the biggest change that she's made since taking over the team. All right, here we go. All right, before we jump in, just want to say that the views expressed in this podcast are Genna's and do not necessarily reflect those of her employer. Okay, with that, Genna, favorite ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, anything else, any other kind of LLM you're using, anything of late that you've been using that for, and or what's in your browsing history? You can do a personal thing, a professional thing, whatever, but kind of what's been going on in your world.
We'll do personal first just because it's a little bit more fun. So, a couple years ago, my husband got a new car, but he switched out my car for the new one he got because, it was like an old Mitsubishi. It was on its last leg, and his car was a little bit nicer. So, I was
Mhm.
like, switch mine out, and eventually I'll get something new. And at that time, I was working from home more. So, driving wasn't that big of a deal. But ever since, he's been determined to get me a new car. Like, let's go car shopping and all that stuff. So we did that. And then with the economy change, interest rates spiking, everything happening, you get to a point where you're like, I don't want a car payment. And so what I have now is his old 2007 Forerunner. And I really like it. You're up higher, you feel safe with your little ones. But needs a new paint job, doesn't have Apple CarPlay, all this stuff. So I got a decent, some decent income. And I was like, hey, how much would it cost to do all this stuff to the Forerunner? And he's like, oh, let's do this and this. And as you can see some of the car stuff, he's a car guy. He did stuff in high school and his dad and him did Snap on. So he's like, oh yeah, you can get all this done for like, I don't know, 10 grand, let's say. And I'm like, seriously? He's like, yeah. And I said, okay, let's do it. He goes, all right. So put together a full listing of what you want done, budget, everything. So ChatGPT, 4th gen Forerunner, what kind of parts can I get, sourcing them locally, all the way through a budget. And it was amazing because then I could just print this out and be like, all right,
Yeah.
what do we do first?
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun. We haven't done anything quite yet, but he probably speakers, stereo, head unit, all that stuff. I was like, that's priority. And then paint and everything else. So we've been having a good time researching stuff, and ChatGPT has been huge in doing that.
All right. That's pretty unique. I like that one.
A little bit more boring, kind of looking for a new steamer, something that's made in America. It's harder than you think to figure out, like, if that's even made there or just an American company. So I try to use ChatGPT as much as I can because there were like a couple that I really liked. And I was like, well, I'll go for the one. I'll support America with all the stuff going on. And finally got to the point where I figured it out. But yeah, I use ChatGPT for that. And then work related has been more, Really documentation help. So, we're in walkthroughs right now, kind of planning them and everything. And one of my staff, she's been with us for a couple of years. She said, we don't have any SOPs for this. I'm like, are we doing the same thing as last year? And then my manager's like, Sally doesn't live here anymore. And I'm like, for this, she does. But no, it was really good for her to say that because I've been really wanting to do more structure in our department. So yeah, it's helping me build out SOPs. I love some of the new features, I guess newish, where you can basically put your document or whatever document it created and then edit it straight in ChatGPT. Or tell it to fix this or add something else. So that's been really convenient and helpful to kind of get some of these little bit more boring things done, but necessities to help improve the department.
Yeah, I really like the SOP, using it for SOPs. I've done that a ton around here because it's just not something I necessarily enjoy doing, documenting those. And so to be able to just pull it up and speak to it and say, like, hey, here's the process. I'm just going to talk it through, which I jokingly always tell people this is why I have a podcast instead of a blog, is because I'd rather just talk than have to type. So to be able to do that and then it just take it and basically turn it into one has been really big. I really like that one. Okay, excellent. How about maybe a pretty good segue? What does your AI and analytics program look like right now?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We have our cyber head of cyber last year. He's really big on trying to improve. So we're a manufacturing company, so we're always looking at ways to use technology, be efficient, make things, better, smarter, faster, cheaper. And so he actually got a enterprise license, ChatGPT, for the company. That way, people who are interested would be able to access it and then have the protection about, try not to put too sensitive stuff in there still because you just want to be careful. But you can still put some things business related and it won't go out to everybody else to use. So we've been really using that like crazy. I started with a license and then he's like, well, let me know if you want more licenses. And I was like, can I have it for my entire team? We're a small team. And he's like, yeah, actually, as long as you guys are using it, then definitely. And just, document how you're using it, any time savings, things that we can share so that we can continue having this as an option in the future. So that's been amazing, and I tell my team I think I use it probably more than anybody else on my team.
Nice.
I just love it. I don't know what I did without ChatGPT
Yeah.
in my life.
Well, it's good to see. I mean, with anything when it comes to like the CAEs or leadership doing it, is when people go, well, if they're doing it, then I guess this isn't just, we're in our ivory tower. Hey, go do AI, or hey, everybody go do analytics. I'll see you later and let's see what awesome stuff you've done. But to see leadership actually use the tools also, I think is probably, well, I don't think so. I know so based on studies and research that's done, is probably, again, not probably, it is the number one reason that it's going to work best for your team than for others that aren't doing that, is because they see you doing it. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and I keep advocating it at the corporate office, like, "Hey, have you thought of throwing this through ChatGPT? It will really help your team." So, like, our accounting department, like, even the SOD stuff, I was like, "Hey, have you thought of trying to do that?" We do, and try to promote leader standard work as well, which is very similar, but it's more high level from SOPs. And I'm also part of our continuous improvement resource team. And so I represent like the accounting and finance functions on that team and continue to promote it out. So we're building actually a custom chat GPT to help with building out leader standard work across the company. So that's been a lot of fun.
Hey, everybody, we're going to take a quick break from our guests. And if you need to get analytics or AI actually working in your internal audit department, or if you already have some of it, you feel like you're not really getting exactly what you need out of it, there's more, you're not getting that, go to the show notes, look for the Green Skies Analytics link, click it. On the website, there'll be other links that you can click that'll take you directly to a calendar to schedule time. It's literally 3 clicks to get the time scheduled, to get it figured out. All right, back to the show. If you could grab every auditor in the world by the shoulders and just shake them and say, will you just do this one thing, what would that be?
Probably think outside the box. That would be the one thing I would say is think critically, don't be afraid to think outside the box and challenge kind of the status quo. Because even I've been with my company 10 years and I've noticed I get kind of comfortable in where I've been in the company and I think I know it all and I'm like, no, I got to keep challenging myself and that's how I will help the company continue to get better, my team included. So yeah, think critically, challenge, ask the questions, don't be afraid to kind of get into it.
We had a team that we were talking to, and they said basically like, we want you guys to come in. Here's our analytics slash AI strategy, and specifically on the analytics side, it kind of gone stale to some degree. He's like, we just need somebody to come in, like shake this thing up, take another look at it, refresh it, and basically get us excited again because we've fallen into that. Like, okay, here's the thing that we're gonna do again. Here's this thing and this thing. So I think that speaks to your point. Okay, how are you and internal audit helping your organization relative to tariffs?
Tariffs have been pretty impactful for our organization because we do ship internationally all over the world, including China. We haven't been as involved as maybe I would like, or I don't necessarily need to be, but because I facilitate ERM. So it's really making sure the company is doing something about it, right? It's in their purview and they're actively managing it, having mitigating activities, things like that. So my role has really been making sure that's happening and just, listening in. Okay, that makes sense. We're doing stuff. And we've been on top of it. Also, tariffs and the kind of how should I say this? The perspective of tariffs coming, about has been really the end of last year, early this year. That was our busy season. So we just have been too busy to really be too involved. And honestly, the experts in the company are on top of it. Our sales teams, our operating team, senior leadership, and they've been doing a really good job.
Yeah,
And luckily, things have been getting a little bit better.
that was perspective someone else shared, not on the podcast, but we are talking tariffs, and I was like, "What are you guys doing?" He's like, "They know, like the executives know, like we're pretty solid on that." He stays in touch with them. This CAE has a good relationship with them, so it's definitely nothing super formal, is what he said, and so I thought that was pretty interesting. You mentioned facilitating ERM. I believe you've been doing that for about the past year ish. What
Perfect.
lessons have you learned in facilitating ERM? Because ERM within audit has been a pretty hot topic, especially as of late.
Yeah, so, what's interesting is when I first took over as a head of audit, they weren't gonna give me ERM. They're like, "She's got enough on her plate, we'll hold off and transition it later." But at the same time, we got a new, audit committee chair, so a new, board member who then transitioned to audit committee. And after our May meeting last year, based off of my performance and seeing how things were going, he really pushed and said, let's give her ERM. I think it's a huge value for audit to be a part of that process, to be in the know of all the risks that are going on with the company, and help make sure that we have adequate mitigation activities. So some of the things kind of being thrown in because I wasn't quite prepared. I was a little bit involved in prior years because my predecessor really made sure that I got the exposure. He was really good about including me on that stuff. But we've had a new CEO for the last couple of years, who actually was prior board member and stepped into the role because of some leadership things going on. And he shook it up because we've been a company for a long time. We've been doing it a certain way, but he shook it up in a really good way because instead of having like IT focus on IT risk and HR focus on HR risk. He switched it and said, no, we need cross functional teams in each of these areas so that you could see different perspectives because everybody's touched by all of these things, but you don't get their view of the organization and the risks that's included in there. So one thing that as I started leading it was making sure you establish a common language. So as you're looking at risk, are you talking about inherent risk? Are you talking about residual risk? And then even your risk levels, right? Your likelihood levels, significant levels. And a lot of people put, a number around it. Is that EBITDA? Is that revenue? Is that so just simple things like that help a ton because you also get new individuals that are part of the risk teams. And so they need to understand what the language and what they're talking about so that we're all speaking the same thing. Because some people have been doing ERM forever and others are like, what's ERM?
And then just real quick, last ERM related thing, because I'm sure as people are launching these, one thing they're going to be like, of course, tools. What tools? What tools are you using? What software should we use? How are you
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
this? So, what are you, to the extent you can share, um, ERM tools that you guys are using?
Yeah, no, good question. So, Excel is still our friend.
Hmm.
We're a small, I won't say small company, but we're very lean. So we try to minimize the amount of tools that we have unless it's really necessary. We actually built our own Power App tool to help manage ERM. We haven't quite got that going yet, but that's been the goal is to really get it going and help, give that view to all the leaders and to the teams, all the risks. So I'm working through that, and looking at other tools. There's a lot of stuff out there, like, we use Workiva for our SOC stuff, so we're seeing if, that would make sense to move ERM to there as well. And then on the other side, for presenting I think that's probably not the biggest, change, but change I want to make. So, the CEO also changed the way we looked at it and did a lot more, of the heat maps that everybody talks about, whether you like them or not. But, I went to GAM recently in March and really focused on learning more about ERM since it's very new thing for my wheelhouse. And, there's a file that I shared with you where it really and obviously this is not my ideal, but I love the approach of it. So one of the things I learned with doing the ERM process last year is knowing who your audience, and this really ties to any presentation that you do, is who are you presenting to and what is the story that you're trying to tell. So I didn't realize when I first presented last year's that it was really a pre-presentation for the board on behalf of our CEO and the rest of management. And a lot of times, what I realize is the story that they're trying to tell is, hey, we want to see the risk, but we also really want to show what we're doing and how it's impacting the risk and how is it changing from year to year. So when I saw this example at GAM, I really loved it because it shows that and one of the conversation was cyber, and that's why I threw it on this as an example because cyber is one of the perfect ones that the risk isn't really changing, right? That it's a high risk. It's probably going to be high for a very long time, but so on the risk exposure axis year over year, really probably will stay pretty level as a very high risk exposure but you can then show for the management effectiveness that it's moving and that lowering that on there, showing that management effectiveness is increasing and that the mitigation activities are working very well, even though the risk remains high and isn't moving from that perspective. So I think that really tells the story in a better way that helps the audience understand whether it's senior management, your CEO, or audit committee.
All right.
And then you can see there's kind of little quadrants too, and that just really helps illustrate, what you should be doing about it. Are you monitoring it? Are you doing it, mitigate it some more, and so on and so forth. And I kind of put a little blurb over each of those to kind of help illustrate a little bit more. So, process improvement is actually a passion of mine. It's one of the reasons why I probably stayed in internal audit all these years because we have that unique perspective to see process improvement opportunities. I always say, as an internal auditor, you get to see the framework of a company from start to finish, and see all the connections, and it's super fun, and I really enjoy that part of my job. Now, from, is it process, mindset, how do I kinda approach it with my team? And this is Jenna's opinion, it's really mindset first, before process, because you can have the best tools and processes in place, but if you don't know how to use them, if you don't, really think outside the box like I was talking about earlier, or just question, "Hey, what are you doing? Why? Have you always done something this way? Have you ever thought of doing X, Y, or Z?" So that's really what I try to train my team to do first. And even all the way up into when I hire people, and this happened to me. So over 10 years ago when I was an intern, the VP of audit at the time, internal audit, who still a friend and mentor today, love her to death. She asked me a question during our phone screening that totally threw me off. She said, "If you had to rate your curiosity from 1 to 10, 1 being low, 10 being super high, how would you rate it?" And at the time, you're nervous. You're like, "I don't wanna say the wrong thing.
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
want to hear right." I was like, 8. I was
8?
probably more 10.
That's where I was thinking. I was like, I'd probably go 8 because that yeah, I think of overanalyze, I go 10. If I say 10, they're gonna be like, "Nobody you can't be a 10, you're
Right,
saying
exactly.
10." Yeah.
Did
So,
the
like, the
same thing.
comfortable answer is 8, but then is that
I
too
was
comfortable? Is that what
like,
you always hear? So
9,
then maybe it's a 9?
9 yeah. So, I was like, 8, I hope that's right,
Yeah.
and then I ended up becoming the intern and getting to where I am today, but now that I look back on that, it's one of my favorite questions that I ask anyone that I'm hiring, and they're probably just as thrown off as me, but honestly, your innate curiosity helps you really have this mindset. So I really look for someone that has a high level of curiosity just in general because you're more likely to ask a question, to try to look deeper into a process or issue or file, whatever you're looking at. Um, and say why. That's all you want is why, and then trying to follow up on that. But mindset first, that's the key. And then once you have the mindset, then the tools and processes get put in place and overlay that to help you systematically find ways to have good recommendations and improvement ideas. And then we always really work with management to say, "Hey, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this?" And they'll be like, "Oh, no, I never thought of that. That might be a good idea." So we really try to play around with some of the ideas we have and get their buy-in so that when we get to our recommendations, they're like, "Oh, yeah, yeah. We totally, yep, agree with that. Totally gonna do it." We work with IT a lot too, because some things are very technical. "Oh, I always have to do this with this field because it limits me and I can't select anything else." And I'm like, "Have you ever talked to IT about adding,
Right.
another option?" "Oh, no." You're like, "Okay."
I like you said mindset over process first, and we were talking to a retired CA recently, and I forget the question, but the answer was something about if it's important enough to you, you'll set up a process around it. And I thought that made a lot of sense to me. Kind of really clicked in my head and went, yeah, that's true. Like the stuff that I actually really care about, and it's important. There are processes, there are even SOPs around that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
so I think that kind of speaks to your mindset over process piece first. Although I do love a solid process.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think starting small is also important, and a lot of people always think process improvement has to be some big jumbo idea that drastically changes the world, but that's not how it really is in real life. A lot of stuff is really small, incremental, but they ended up making a huge change in the end, especially in somebody's job function.
yeah,
If they have something that's just such a pain point, which we ask all the time, then you say, well, can we just fix that one small pain point and help them do that? And it means the world.
Yeah. My go-to is always, "Hey, you can just put that in a pivot table, right? And, like, you'll be done."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, but pivot tables, I don't really know." I'd be like, click a couple things, like, "There's the is that the thing you're trying to do?" "Yep, great." Okay. What about we'll start to kinda wrap it up.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
You've been in the CAE role for a little over a year now. What's the biggest change that you've kinda made in taking over the team or that you've seen even in taking over the team?
So it's a good question. I actually asked my team because I've been in internal audit for a long time. Prior to this, I was the manager, so I had a lot of input at that time. So I didn't make a ton of changes right off the bat because I was still kind of getting comfortable with being in the role and holy moly, what did I do? And this is really, really where I want to be. But no, I started making small tweaks, in some of my presentations and some of the ways we approach things. One of the things I realized when I did move into the role is that we've been doing things for so long, and we have such a mindset to help everybody else. We've never really done it for ourselves. I've really started putting like templates together, standardizing our processes, checklists, and obviously use them sparingly, but it is good to have a methodical way, right? Building the SOPs out. I just did a walkthrough one because we're doing walkthroughs, and I was like, we don't have an SOP. Let's write one up. It won't take that long. And so then I asked my team, and they kinda said the same thing. They're like, "You're really focused on the future of the department and how do we continue to make it better," right? Our department, like many other internal audits, is a springboard for other positions in the company. So, yeah, we're constantly training new people probably every 2 to 3 years, and I like it, but it is it's time consuming. So having some of these structured processes and templates in place will help make a lot of that easier. It also gives my team a lot more security over making sure they feel like they're doing the right thing and they're moving on to the right processes and thinking through their next steps in whatever project that they're doing.
All right, and I know you have an actual example, a process improvement example that we've got pulled up on the screen now. So for those that are listening just to the audio, if you want to see what we're talking about, as well as the other example on the ERM side, if you go to the YouTube channel, you'll be able to see what we're talking about here. So with that said, I'll throw it to you, Jenna. Set this up, walk us through what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so this came about last year, and a lot of times because during the SOX process, we really are the liaison between external audit and management. And one, we speak the language, one, we just, may have asked the question before or understand the business process around what their question is. And so what we realized is every year during the SOX season when we're doing either direct assistance or they're doing controls testing, that they tend to find somebody on the team that they like in the department or they're comfortable with and end up emailing them all the questions that they have. And so one member of the internal audit team gets just bombarded with question after question after question. And the person who's the most experienced would be me being here for 10 years, and I probably know half the answers potentially, pretty quickly, where she or that person would have to look them up or come and ask me. But, the staff in the external auditor, group is not gonna necessarily email the head of internal audit right away, right? So what we did, is and you can do this in SharePoint, you can do it, probably within, um one of your auditing tools. It just depends. I think we used Workiva, but like I said, anywhere where you can share a document with the external auditors and your team at the same time, then you can make changes, both make changes and updates, and don't worry about saving or anything like that. So yeah, it's a simple spreadsheet where we have external audit questions. Is it SOX related? Is it direct assistance related? What the question is, who's the person asking it, and like the status, right? Has it been answered or not? And then on the next side is our team. And then that's where they can either put a team member, but typically me or whoever's looking at the spreadsheet will just add their name to it and say, "Hey, I got it." So that, all right, you don't have 5 people trying to answer the same question, and then put the answer or link whoever they're looking for and put complete. So we monitor that throughout the whole SOX process, and it's really helped alleviate that, just going to one person. And then it could go the other way too. If we have questions for them, they can pop up there. So super easy. Like I said, simple process improvement tool. That's been huge for us.
Simple, and it's not like, hey, everybody's going to be on the same Slack channel to where you're getting bombarded with messages potentially, or some that one off here that interrupts work. I like when we can stack work like that together, batch it together, and then just like you said, like once a day, pop in there, whatever it is. We good? Yep. Nope. Need to update this. Cool. And then get out of there, as opposed to, oh, here's another alert, another Slack alert, another Slack alert. So
Yep.
very, very simple, almost too simple
It is, that's what I was like,
idea.
it's small but effective, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the little things, but just being a little more organized and helping with that visibility is a really big deal.
All right, Jenna. Anything else you want to leave the audience with? I'm going to throw the mic to you and let you take us out.
Yeah, so just a quick shout out to my team, friends, mentors, and family because I wouldn't be where I am without them. But I have a couple points. One is for anyone out there that is looking to move up into an audit leadership role, I just want to say, hard work is just one part of the process. You really need to put yourself out there and make connections within your organizations, out in the community. Start building those relationships because I can't even describe really how effective they are. And then if you have the opportunity or, honestly, make the opportunity to have a mentor. Find someone that you connect with that's a leader. It doesn't have to be an audit leader. It can be a different leader or in your organization. And don't just have one listen to them. Really have conversations. It's on you. I've had many mentors. They've been tremendously helpful to me in my advancement. Sometimes it's just somebody that you need to, bounce ideas off of. My predecessor has been a huge mentor to me. I wouldn't be here without him, and I've had some other really key people in my life that they just help, with that support system to help keep me going or show me a way. And it's funny, the prior VP that I mentioned earlier, she's my friend and mentor still. And I was thanking her for everything she's done, and, I was like, "This is amazing. You've been great. I wouldn't be here without you." She's like, "Well, you made it easy." And I was like, "What do you mean I made it easy?" And she said, "You listen, and you actually did the things that I recommended you to do, and so you made it easy to mentor you." And so don't just get one, but make sure you're listening and taking in their feedback and trying to find ways to apply it where it makes sense. And then for those that are in my position recently, or maybe not so recently, I just want to say you could do it because I think I was in my first week of my role and I had that whole imposter syndrome. I still do every once in a while. Like, what did I make the right decision? Can I do this? And my predecessor, I walked into his office. I was like, I can't do this. Nope, nope, nope. You made a mistake. You picked the wrong person to take after you. And he looked at me, he's like, "You can do this. You've been doing this. You're going to be great." And I just needed to hear that and just remember, yeah, you can do it. You worked really hard to get where you're at. You're not there by mistake. Just believe in yourself and yeah, go to your support system sometimes, and that's okay too. Talking it through with him, just getting my feelings out there made me feel 10 times better. And, it's okay not to know everything. You're not going to, you're not expected to. So saying, I don't know, even in something like an audit committee meeting or with your CEO or CFO, it's okay. Just say, I don't know, but I will find out and get back to them. And, that's really key. Being there, communicating with them, and it goes back and forth, right? So communicate, be there, believe in yourself. You got this.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Audit Podcast. Whatever platform you're listening on right now, I'm sure there's a subscribe button somewhere, so please hit the subscribe button there. If you're listening through iTunes or Spotify, feel free to go give us that 5-star rating. It only took me about 16 seconds to give myself a 5-star review, and it really helps to get future guests to come on the show, so we'd really appreciate that. Lastly, be sure to check out the show notes and follow us on all our social media channels on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on TikTok. Also, if interested, please sign up for our weekly newsletter from the Audit Podcast. Thank you all. Have a great one.